I think every woman in the world is beyond impressed and gracious for the fight for equality and equity and pay that the national team players fought. It was a long battle, and I think it really raised the game for every industry.
Yeah, likewise. I mean, I think we see that courage, the ability to really hold fast to beliefs and values and really signal to younger players, girls, we're doing this for you. And I think beyond the league and sports itself, what can women fight for? What should they fight for? Welcome to the Women on the Move podcast. I'm your host, Sam Saperstein. This season, we're delving into how strong communities create opportunities, foster belonging, and empower leaders to make a lasting impact. Joining us today is Julie Haddon, Chief Marketing and Commercial Officer of the National Women's Soccer League. Julie is a dynamic leader whose influence spans across some of the most iconic organizations in sports and entertainment. Before joining the NWSL, she spent 5 years at the NFL, where she served as a Senior Vice President of Global Brand and Consumer Marketing. There, she led groundbreaking campaigns for major events like the Super Bowl and NFL Draft. At the NWSL, Julie has been a pivotal force in shaping the league's brand and consumer engagement strategies. A few days before recording this episode, it was announced that Julie will be stepping down from her post. So this conversation will be an opportunity to reflect on her accomplishments and talk about what community means to her. Julie, welcome to the Women on the Move podcast. It's so nice to have you on with us.
It's awesome to be here. Thanks for having me.
So you've had such an interesting career in sports, in media, and technology. You've been a branding and marketing leader. I just want to start with, how did this all come to be? What were those motivations for you as you were thinking about your career that led you to these industries and also to this function?
I'd love to say that I had a North Star and I followed it to the letter and there was the perfect map along the way.
Was it?
Nope, that's the real truth. I felt like I've always been the kind of person that sees something and goes for it. And, I go back and I think about my early days in entertainment, and what I was so drawn to the entertainment industry from working at places like DreamWorks was the creative, the unparalleled creativity and the magic that comes out of cinema and working on CGI feature films. And then when I was drawn to and working in places in tech, like eBay, for example, or helping early companies like Twitter in 2006, or some of these really, really early times, is that I just love the ideas of the analytics and the data that would come from tech. And then sports, that was something I was always captivated with because I grew up as a Chicago sports family, but I was also really driven to the whole world of avidity and fan centricity and only things that come from sports. We have the most amazing fans on the planet that get together over a shared love of a game.
Oh, that's incredible. So I see a lot of themes of innovation with you, doing things differently, creativity, and you could definitely see how that can come out of all of those industries, which is fantastic. So storytelling also has played a really key part of your journey. What is it about storytelling and really connecting with people as a brand that gets you so excited?
It's, as a marketer, I think it is such a fascinating tool because it's like breathing. It is just finding the right story and getting it to the right audience. And I give an example of something because there's often in the tech world where I spent a fair amount of my career, I'd go on a meeting with someone and they would say, how do you measure empathy? And I would say, well, how do you know what's going to make a certain person cry? Because empathy registers in so many different ways, and it's metabolized in so many different ways by different kind of people. And so the shared experience I have is I every year for fun go to Sundance Film Festival as kind of like my sojourn in the winter to go just sit in a movie or the movies for literally 8 hours. I'll go see the 8 o'clock, I'll see the 11, I'll see the 1, I'll see the 3, the 5, and I'm there. Sitting there.
Right.
And sometimes, most often, I'm by myself and just watching movies. And by the end of a movie, just have this shared personal experience from a story. And I'm sitting next to a guy watching a movie called, 21 Hotel Rooms, I think was the name of it. And by the end of the movie, he's like, you want some of my licorice? Because we were both so mad at the character. We were both so taken in emotionally. And I think that's something that storytelling can take you on this journey that often is very singular. And it's such a powerful tool to connect with audiences.
That is for sure true in so many industries, media, of course, sports too. And the way you described it, there's just a loyalty when it comes to sports, a kinship, a community building, so
Hmm.
many things, right? And sports start at an early age with that loyalty for the rest of your life. Maybe there's nothing quite like it, actually. So, how do you think about that in the context of sports, building that fan community? And being at the National Women's Soccer League, I'm really curious about this because we've seen so many amazing athletes come out of that league. I think it's been on our consciousness for some time. So
Hmm.
how do you go even further with that and deepen it?
Well, I think the best opportunity is the product is so good. You got to start with a
Mhm,
really good product. And one of the things that I love about the NWSL is that we do have the best players in the world that play inside our league. In fact, a campaign that my team and I worked on 2 years ago was called We Play Here,
mm,
because there were so many players from the World Cup in 2023 that played and competed in New Zealand and Australia, and then even in the Olympics that won the gold in
mm,
2024. What you have is the best players in the world from many, many countries. It's not just the US national team, but we have players from Canada, or players from Brazil, or players from South America. It's just wherever, Africa, we have a lot of players from different countries. And I think the whole concept of the storytelling and the ability to shine the light on the players and the
mm,
product is what makes it so good.
yeah.
And then you care, and then you follow them, right? It's so much of tune-in marketing or viewership marketing is a lot around CBS, 7 p.m. Saturday or Friday or Sunday nights. A lot of that works when you already have established
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
why or the
Yeah.
who. So the when then works better. So what we do a lot with our work and my team is that we focus on opening up that lens into following an incredible story like Tema Chawinga from Africa, or somebody who's just consistently breaking records, or Corey Bethune, a MVP, I mean, a rookie who plays for the Washington Spirit. And you get to know who she is, and then you want to follow her on that journey.
All the time. It's so interesting when I hear you say that. I certainly think of the Olympics because it's that moment of time where we see a lot of stories from
Hmm.
sports that we don't hear about until those 4-year marks
Hmm.
come.
Hmm.
But you're working in a sport where we can hear about them every year, all the time.
Hmm.
And so, what draws you to some players? Like, what makes you say, ooh, that player is going to have a really interesting story we should tell and follow? And maybe there's more than one, of course.
Well, I think there's such an opportunity. It depends really, the audience again.
Hmm.
So a perfect example is a story of somebody that's got a rare background or an unusual way of growing their skill or their craft. Somebody that has a different educational path. Somebody that has a performance on the pitch is often what is
Mm,
featured, but I think that is just the stats. But when you get to learn behind the person, so
yeah.
an example of this would be Lola Bonta. She's one of our players for the Kansas City Current, and she graduated from Stanford. I think she has a video game degree or an engineer. I mean, super, super smart
Yeah.
player, but she's also incredibly gifted on the field. And so she real personality, a lot of fun to watch, but also you can learn a little bit about her background.
Oh, I love that. So, given you were also at the NFL, I mean, you can't think of two more important franchises probably in American sports. What did you learn there about storytelling and about really deepening those relationships,
Mm.
but with fans?
Well, I mean, the NFL was such an honor,
Mm,
180 million plus fans worldwide.
it's
They own a
incredible.
day of the week.
Yes,
So
yes.
talk about
In my house, more than one day, actually.
it is. It's no longer one day. It's right. You have Thursday.
Thursday,
Yeah,
Sunday, sometimes
well, and
Sunday.
day after Christmas, day after thing. I
Hmm.
mean, there's a
Hmm.
lot of or Thanksgiving. There's a lot of new windows for gaming if for watching the games at NFL. But I think part of it is that the fan avidity amongst the 32 clubs, it's like permeating cultures and generations and 100-plus-year-old sport leagues. So what I learned at the NFL was a lot about, the exceptional people I got to work with.
Mm,
So my manager at NFL, uh, one of the programs and kind of big initiatives he pushed forward would often talk about helmets off,
mm,
because again, when you're looking, especially the view onto the field through television or at a game, you're so far back and they're so covered in protection and helmets. Like, who are these players? And again,
mm.
that's something that I took over from NFL to
I
bring over
love
to the
that.
NWSL. We had no helmets, but
Yeah,
the
yeah.
helmets off theoretically or metaphorically is really what we aimed for.
Seeing players better, getting to know them better, just understanding
Absolutely.
who they are. That's fascinating. So you've gone from a franchise in sport, as you mentioned, that it's such a long history, huge fan base globally, really dictates a calendar of our years, culminates in the Super Bowl, which is the biggest thing globally. And then you go to women's soccer, which, I mean, women's soccer obviously has been on the rise, but it's very, very different. And
Yeah.
so I'm kind of curious when you went from one thing to the next, and then we're able to focus on women as the players in the product. What did that mean to you?
Well, first of all, I love startups. I love being part of something that there's people that maybe scratch their head a little bit. Why?
Like, why did you
So
go? Like, why did
why
you make
did
the
I
decision?
go, or what was I thinking? Or,
Yeah.
there was a moment of time where I remember when I was at DreamWorks
Yeah.
and I was talking to eBay about leaving DreamWorks on the heels of the movie Shrek that came out in 2001. Now, I'm dating myself a bit, a few years ago, but it was probably 2003, 2004. And I had met Meg Whitman, who was the
Hmm.
CEO of eBay at the time. And their head of North America said, hey, you have a job, maybe come over to eBay. And I told one of my colleagues at DreamWorks, and he said, what are you doing? You're going to go to a flea market? And I said,
Oh my goodness.
you could say that, or I'm going to go learn the future of commerce.
Oh, yes.
Because at the time, and one of the things that's so magical about the early days of eBay, it was peer-to-peer commerce.
Mm-hmm.
You had no idea what you were going to get. I see a video camera that I want to
Right.
get. It might show up in a Cheerio box, but it might be $200 instead of $2,000. There's such a moment of cool
It was auction
commerce.
days, right?
And
The
it was
early days.
auctions. You set the price. The buyer dictates what they want to pay. The seller sets a price. You can do it or not. And then it just built out all these communities of people that were doing, depression glass collectors, Beanie Babies, Pez dispensers, and then legitimate things that were big business equipment and
Yeah.
automotives, things that were like $50,000 tickets for $5 tickets. And so I think what was really exciting about the early days of eBay, it was peer-to-peer commerce. Yet somebody told me it was a flea market. And then I went to work at PayPal, because eBay owned PayPal at the
Yes.
time.
Yes, that's
And it
right.
was so long ago that the person who put the calendar invite, it said, go to talk to PayPal about PayPal Mobile. And I thought, oh, how cute. PayPal's going to wrap a bus and go on the road.
Oh my goodness.
But it was
That's
2 years
funny.
before the iPhone.
Right,
What it
right,
was
right.
is payment on your phone. And again, people thought, what are
So
you
neat.
doing? You're going to work at PayPal? That's a bank. And I'm like, you could say that,
Yep.
but I'm going to go learn the future of mobile and commerce on your phone. And that's what we did. We invented it. Similar happened at Twitter. What are you doing going to Twitter? They had this, thing that was South by Southwest, little cottage group of people that were, tech enthusiasts that were part of Macworld. And I thought, I feel like brands are going to start using this. And that was something I worked on, early on. And I'd helped the founders in building out what was the early days of the verified account and things that were making brands and celebrities and athletes and businesses start using Twitter. But at the time we had 800,000, 900,000 users.
That's unbelievable. I mean, I really sense a theme here of you really finding these very new, unproven, not as well known opportunities.
Yeah.
I mean, did you, in each of those situations, did you have that glimmer of what it could be? Did you just enjoy that entrepreneurship opportunity? Are you a risk taker? All the above? How did it all come? These are incredible brands, and they all became really big success stories.
Yeah.
But at the time you went there might not have been that guarantee.
No, I mean, I follow, talk about the North Star. I tend to really be good on intuition. And I felt like Twitter was going to be something that brands would want to use. We only had a couple brands. I remember going to sports leagues. Ironically, I was talking to one of the big four sport leagues in their office, and it was 2000 and I don't know, 2009 or something like that. And I said, no, it was probably even earlier than that. It might have been 2006, but it was something around, I want to use Twitter for athletes. And
And they looked at you like, what are
they're
you
like, what are
talking
you
about?
talking about? Like,
What is that?
but because when you go back and you think about what Twitter is defined with cultures and generations, I
Yeah.
mean, I know it's a lot different now, but when I think back how we would find out the news breaking, who
Right.
won Florida, who won Pennsylvania during an election, who was let out of jail in Egypt, what brand was having a sale on Friday for something at the deli. I mean, there's so many incredible thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of use cases. But
Yeah.
at the time, I just felt like it was this really interesting platform to connect and communicate in real time.
I love that. So the connection piece and the building community is also this theme. I think you seem to be able to find places where people can reach other people or start
Yeah.
dialogue or not just sell something, because I think what you describe is so much more than selling something for commerce sake. But are you always looking for that golden truth, that like nugget that tells somebody's story in that way that is really universal?
Yes, and I haven't thought of it that way, but that's yes. I
Trying to
think
see
what
the
the
coin.
connective tissue in all of these is that there's a utility with the humanity piece of it.
Mm.
So bringing
I love
people
that.
closer together, like a Twitter, or bringing joy and love of the game, like you see at an NWSL, where you go to an NFL game and people are covered in face paint and red because they're cheering on their favorite team, and it's the Cardinals, and hell or high water, I'm going to go. The players the fans that wear, dead of winter in Kansas City when it's 10 degrees and they're wearing no shirt and they're painted with their favorite player. I mean,
Louisiana.
there's something that involves bringing people together and the
Yeah.
joy of that. And I've always felt like that is, in some ways, one of my missions is as a person, is to bring joy and bring people together, connect.
Well, you definitely found the right platforms for that. When you think about the different sports leagues you have worked with, was there something about building the community you could replicate from one to the next? Or do you have to say, this is a different sport with different audience
Hmm.
members? We have a different product in a sense. I have to do something slightly different, but maybe there's something I can borrow from the last experience?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. And as a marketer, as a lifelong CMO, I actually don't have a playbook. A lot of people do. They come in like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to research in the first month. We're going to then
Mm,
go do a rebrand in month 3, or we're going to do segmentation
yeah.
analysis in month. I don't do that because I feel like every platform's different, every audience different, and I don't traditionally, as you see with my career, follow the like just a very linear path. I kind of go where the path may not go and think about how do I leave something behind. And
Mm,
I would say that the tools of what you do, what I learned at an NFL, is really about showcasing the avidity and bringing that avidity to new people that are may not. So what I love was what the NFL is doing with bringing in the NFL internationally right now.
mhm.
So some of the things that I do use is to focus on like the game, the joy, the rivalry, the intensity, the
Yeah.
competition. That's something that came from NFL too. That, and if I go somewhere else, that's what I would still do because you want to connect with fans. It's
Mhm.
like the best content possible.
Yeah.
But no, I don't really, because if I can compare apples to watermelons, there's no difference in a budget at
Oh,
where we are right now, but there's really no one true playbook.
mm. Well, you raise a really important point. There's not usually not the NFL size budget for most leagues or companies. So how do you take a great product on not such a big budget and make something magical happen as a marketer?
I have to depend on which product it is, but it does involve some storytelling. So I would say a perfect example. So early at Twitter, I don't even know if I can find this. It's so rogue early. But we had a bit of a problem. It was probably 875,000 users at the
Mm.
time. And I was, like I said, I was helping out with the founders. And I wanted to explain why. Because we had different ways people would explain Twitter. It was real
Like
simple
why use
marketing.
it, the value
Yeah, the value
proposition.
prop, like, what's the marketing single most important message?
Yeah.
What is the
Okay.
what is the log line, if you will, on
Hmm.
Twitter? And Jack used to say Twitter was a
Jack Dorsey.
Jack Dorsey used to say it was a multi-platform agnostic communication tool.
Okay, that's not a
He didn't say
marketer's
that
dream.
public, but he would say that he said it in the office enough, and then we did media training, and again, it was real early, and none of us knew what it was gonna be, so how
Mm.
could we have answered that question?
Hmm.
So what we did was we went and talked to some of our I almost called them fans, but at the time they were users. I spent a lot of time at sports
With
not
fans.
calling
Yeah.
our fans users, and I have to do it the other way around. So we called our fans, our customers users, and we would talk to the customers or the users, and, it was so old school that I walked around with, like, a flip cam. Remember those things? Am I allowed to say a brand here? I don't know. I don't know if they're
Brand.
okay.
Yeah.
A little handheld
Yeah.
camera, and the little handheld camera would ask people, "Why do you use Twitter?" So we picked a couple markets. I had a $10,000 budget, and I went from market to market, and I would talk to people, and there was this one woman, and I don't wanna say her name or out her, but her screen name was Crazy Wanda, and I asked her, "What do you use Twitter for?"
Hmm.
And she said, "Twitter," in this video, the
Hmm.
Twitter Why video, she said, "It is my own personal AP newswire." And
Oh,
that woman was what I kept holding us to, because that all of us at Twitter were like, yeah, let's start looking at patterns of how we were starting to see
yes, the
the
users.
the the recognition of news alerts and
Mm-hmm.
news breaking in this platform, which then became what is happening right now. Because the old value prop was, what are you doing right now? And
Mm.
through that experience, we're able to flip it and say,
What is
what's
happening in the
happening
world
right
out
now?
there?
It's a global
Interesting.
slice of life.
Crazy Wanda really had that.
Crazy Wanda was amazing.
Wow. But that,
And I'm sorry if she's listening and I'm outing her. Sorry.
hopefully she has other names
Initial
now.
CD. I won't say who it is, but she was amazing.
That is a great lesson in you have to go to that fan base, users, customers, be in the field with them. I've always found that fascinating, the things you will pick up by watching people use your actual product. I think it's
Absolutely.
fantastic that you
Yeah.
would do that. So now with soccer, and you spent a lot of time there, can you think of any campaigns you run in the last few years that also helped you connect to that audience in that way? Like maybe you tapped into something that no one had really thought of before when it came to the league and the fans?
Yeah, I think of 2. I think of what I really like is actually, I'm partial to it because it's my team's campaign that we did this year, and it's called Just Watch. And the reason I love it so much is it's kind of got a swagger and an attitude. It's like,
Mm.
"Just watch."
Ah,
But it also has a tune-in call to action to it,
yeah.
and it's kind of brilliant like that because it's introducing our players. So in Times Square, there's big, I don't know, 60-foot jumbotron of Barbara Banda, and
Mm.
you look up and you're Trinity Rodman, and you look up and you're like, "Just watch."
Unbelievable.
So it didn't look like just some random ad. There's a
Yeah.
mystique to it, and so I really
The
liked
power.
that ability to kinda get you intrigued, but also the
Mm.
marketer in me that has a ROI sensibility is like, how is it working and what
Mm.
is it doing?
And how do you measure something like that? What would be the things you're looking at over time?
Well, we can measure ad recall, we can
Mhm.
measure awareness, we can measure intent to watch, viewership intent, and then
Mhm.
obviously the big holy grails, the ratings of the
Mm.
games
The
itself.
viewers
Yeah.
themselves, and then the sponsorships or other things, partnerships along the
Sponsorship,
way.
people that wanna be part of the league and
Yeah.
wanna be our partners, yes.
Do you ever consider a metric around number of girls who wanna go play soccer and be like those big kids?
Well, it's interesting, I think in general, all the right now with women's sports, everything is growing so much.
Yeah.
There's probably a macro metric out there of intent to play or participate
Yeah.
because there's a pathway now. So you played
Right.
volleyball in high school and then maybe a year or 2 in college. Now you could be a pro and play for League
Mm.
One
Yeah.
or love volleyball. You're a softball player, you can now all of a sudden play for Athletes Unlimited. You're always the WNBA is almost 30 years old, but there was a path on that, and our
Right.
league's 13 years old. But what I love is some of these upstart leagues that are coming around and,
Mm.
driving new pathways for, I think there's a couple volleyball leagues now
Yeah.
that are pro
Yep.
and many, many more. I think right now we're about 6 or 7 new pro sports leagues for women out there.
It is unbelievable. It is so exciting. But let's take the girls and the women aside for a minute. How do we draw more of the men in? Well, first of all, are we drawing the men in? What did your
Absolutely.
research show? Which,
Yep.
okay, I'd love to hear that. And what do you think it is about the sport or really all women's sports that will keep everyone in, men and women?
I think it's a great question, and I think there's a level of challenger brand DNA that our league has, and a lot
Mm.
of these. Unrivaled, another example of one I've loved. They're the, women's basketball, short game.
Yeah.
And I think what makes people come in is the fact that we're just not traditional. They're not traditional in our values, they're not traditional in our fan base, they're not traditional in the way we play or the way our schedule goes. Or I mean, soccer in America is so tricky because our schedule takes a break in the summer because of a FIFA window, which is the global calendar. So there's so many different things we're not tethered to when you're
Mm.
not a 100-year-old sport league, when you're a small kind of a startup DNA challenger brand. So I think that one of the things we hear a lot is a lot of our fans are just fans of the sport played by women.
Mm.
They're not fans of women's sport. So we get young fans. We have very millennial, Gen Z, Gen Alpha. We have a very,
Got it.
very split fan base, actually, men and women,
Mm.
families that come in. So there's a lot of, I think, growth that still is to come, but a lot of it is not what I think years ago people might have thought of as
Mm.
women's sports.
That is really interesting. So people who just happen to love soccer, who want to watch that, regardless if it's men or women playing it, will do that.
Love soccer, love the DNA of the ethos of the brand, love the
Yeah.
fast-paced energy of the game. Happens to be played by women and some of the best in the world that play in our
That's
league.
fantastic. That's fantastic. So what's a legacy you would like to leave at the soccer league or frankly anywhere you've been? What do you think your legacy has been in some of these places?
Oh, wow. That's such a serious question. I'll tell you a quick story. When I went to Cannes for the Lions Creativity Festival, it was in 2019. My team was there. I was there with my manager and a couple of our agency folks
And you were at
because
the NFL.
when I was at the NFL, thanks for clarifying. And I was at the NFL, we were there for a Super Bowl ad that we had made with 72 and Sunny. And the ad was, maybe some of the listeners have seen it. It was Marshawn Lynch. It was the 100th anniversary ad in the ballroom and tackling each other over a cake, and chaos ensued in this ballroom. We had 40 plus players in it, and this ad was up. So because of being in Cannes for that moment, I also knew that the World Cup was happening in France. And the day I was doing some panel with a member from Fox, and Fox was our broadcast partner at the time for Thursday Night Football and for Sunday, there was a gentleman who asked if anybody wanted to go to the World Cup. I'm like, yeah, I want to see this. This women's soccer is the best in the world. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go check out the top of the game. Never been to a World Cup for women before, and we went over to Nice, and it was at a stadium called Allianz Stadium, and there were probably 10,000 people there out of 60,000, and it was the game of England against Japan, and I was stunned by how I couldn't find good merch anywhere. No swag. One little capsule truck on the way out. The other thing I couldn't believe is that there was 20% full. So you have a stadium that's 80% empty, and I get spoiled at the NFL. You didn't get a chance to see stadiums ever empty. And I came back from that trip, and about a month later, I was flying to Seattle for a meeting with someone at Microsoft, and I had a book with me, a little journal that I keep, and I write thoughts down, and I wrote, I need to make the world a better place for women through sport. So when I think about my legacy, I think about, have I done this? And I feel like when I leave the NWSL, I'll have made a big impact and left a place better than I found it. And that's all we could really wish for when you come in and do what I do.
I love that, though. I mean, that was such a fortuitous journey for you to see that game, experience the gap and the opportunity, and then actually be at the league.
It really bothered me. I was like, how could this be the best in the world? And they're players are playing with a stadium that's 80% empty. I had to fix it.
I mean, you did. I'm sure you did fix it. That's incredible, though. Nowadays, I think we feel a kinship with the sports league, not only what they've done, the U.S. team, with what they've done internationally and just their unbelievable performance consistently, but what they've done off the field, too. And perhaps in no other sport can you see women or men or the players collectively coming together to really fight a bigger battle. And the sports, in the soccer case, of course, pay equity. As you were seeing this all unfold, how did that also impact you just as a professional and someone being in the league, knowing what the players were also trying to do?
I think every woman in the world is beyond impressed and gracious for the fight for equality and equity and pay that the national team players fought. It was a long battle, and I think it really raised the game for every industry.
Yeah. Likewise. I mean, I think we see that courage, the ability to really hold fast to beliefs and values, really signal to younger players, girls, we're doing this for you. And I think beyond the league and sports itself, what can women fight for? What should they fight for? So that's a legacy, I think, that is important to me. And I just love that it came out of sports and the team and people. So what's next for you? What else is your curiosity taking you to focus on these days?
I don't know. I have some kids that they're getting older, and I want to spend some more time with my son, who's 17. He's going to college in a year from now. So what's next for me personally is I want to find him a great place to go hang his hat for his college experience. He's an artist, and he wants to go do something with video games. So that's going to be a fun experience, helping him think about that. Professionally, I just love building businesses and taking really interesting disruptive brands and taking them into the world. And so I probably have been doing some investing lately. I'm on a couple boards. I'm on the board of a company called Fubo, which is a MVPD streaming service. And I'm also on the board of Toka Soccer, which is like a Topgolf for soccer. And I'm excited about that. I'm excited to see how, with the World Cup coming to America, how we can be doing location-based location-based entertainment. There's actually a word I heard the other day. I don't like it, but they called it like eatertainment. Like a
Entertainment.
place where you have a dining and soccer and bar and I don't know. It's a strange word.
Bar
but
plus.
bar plus.
Playing something.
How about a restaurant with sports?
Right.
But anyway, that's what
A sports
that's,
bar.
the marketers have to come up with a good next word.
Yes.
But no, I'm excited about doing some work on helping invest and build other companies too. And
Love that.
obviously, our league has a long way to go and a lot of opportunity ahead of it.
And so many investors, people coming into so many women's sports. So I'm sure you'll be behind it in some way or another. So Julie, it's interesting to hear you say people were questioning some of your decisions when you went to different companies and they were new. I'm wondering who supported you as you took on these new opportunities and really believed in you and that you would make something of them.
Great question. I had a couple people I can think of. I would say probably at different chapters, I had a different mentor, depending upon where I was and what I was doing. But my first mentor was Gail Blevins, who happened to be the Indiana University softball coach. And I was on the team, and she was an incredible mentor. And she taught me about discipline and resilience and getting my butt kicked and getting up and going on. And a lot around what I think takes when you have been an athlete. So that was one. The second part of my career, I would say, was when I found my way into digital and internet and coming from DreamWorks, where it was such a creative industry. I walked into a place where it was much more tech driven and it was hard. And I had a wonderful mentor, still a friend, Gary Briggs, who was the chief marketing officer at eBay. He was also at Google. He was also at Facebook at the time when it was called Facebook. And he became a wonderful mentor. And he always used to tell me, don't mess with your swing. Just go for what you do really well. Don't try to be what you do differently. Said it a couple different words that I won't say on a podcast, but the gist of it was that. And then the third person I would say was Dawn Hudson. And Dawn Hudson was the president of PepsiCo when before she was at the NFL, but she was the chief marketing officer of the NFL. And she became a great mentor and still is a friend. And what I loved about Dawn was she was the one that put the first women's summit together when Super Bowl 2016 happened in San Francisco, and that's how we actually met.
Oh, wow.
Because I executive produced that for her. And she had a real vision about growing fan bases outside of the core, and she started working a lot on how the fastest growing fan base at the NFL was women. It still is. I mean, it's just a wonderful human, but just an incredible, exceptional executive that taught me a lot about, when you see a vision, go for it.
It seems like with all these incredible people who were at the top of their game, there was something about mentoring you that they clearly enjoyed. Is it because you took their feedback? I mean, did you listen to them even through the hard things? I mean, they must have given you the good and the bad.
Yeah, it wasn't always glitter. No, it was definitely not. It was you're doing this or you need to do this or stop doing this, stop, go. But I think that the nice thing about having a mentor and a trusted friend is I've always been the kind of person that I would rather have somebody say something that's tough feedback than it not being real. Because when it's not real, it's not actionable.
Yeah.
And so I think that they are incredible humans that did share the not so good with the good.
It's hard. It's hard to hear the not so good feedback, but maybe being an athlete and getting back up or just trusting that these people had your back, it makes it easier to hear.
Yeah. Yep. You're used to getting your butt kicked, like I said, many times and then some.
Thank you, Julie. It's so great to have you on
Thank you.
and hear all your perspectives and keep building these great things.
Let's keep going. As they say in our sport, LFG.
Thank you for listening to my conversation with Julie Haddon. As a marketer, I love that she never had just one playbook. She took the time to go deep and understood the potential of new companies. In growing their brands, she helped them to build vibrant communities. We hope this episode helps you reflect on the power of community in your own life. If you're enjoying our podcast, please like, subscribe, and follow on your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss an episode.